So it is my great pleasure to introduce our final presenter for today, Janson Chan, who founded Autism Teenager Partnership, ATP, a national nonprofit organization that aims to support more than 80 teenagers with autism and their families. He leads a team of 15 young professionals and has successfully implemented free and accessible community and social drop in programs. And these initiatives offer opportunities for participants to enhance social skills, foster support networks, and establish friendships. Having effectively managed grants totaling over 35,000, Janssen's vision for ATP involves developing a toolkit and franchise model that can empower other groups to create similar programs catering to teenagers with autism. Aside from his involvement with ATP, Jansen serves as an executive member of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario Region 7, where he actively advocates for families affected by autism and works at York Region Public Health. He holds a Master's of Healthcare Administration from the University of Toronto and a Bachelor of Nursing from York University. Welcome, Jansen.
Hey, thank you so much, Jennifer and Karen, for that wonderful presentation. I'm looking forward to the panel and the Q&A, and very grateful to be part of this group to sort of share my experience. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge that the elephant in the room, and I do identify as he, him. However, I am a product of very strong women in my life. So hopefully through this presentation, I can share some of the lessons learned, hopefully inform you in your work as well. So thank you, Zesta, for my bio. I'll take this time to introduce a bit more about Autism Teenage Partnership, or ATP. And for myself, it is a very personal initiative that is very close to my heart. So in this presentation, I'll go over a bit more about this, my personal background, and sort of why I do this work. Number two is how we got started and how, from conversation to action, how 8 years later we're now part of this larger group and where we're at now. So when I describe Autism Teenage Partnership, I like to start off with an image. So, you see an image here, a playground, and what do we see? What do we see here? And it's very clearly someone being bullied. But why is that? Maybe because this young person is new to the school. Maybe she looks different from the other students at school. Maybe she's different. Maybe she has autism. This is a very familiar scene, as I have a brother with autism or autism spectrum disorder, and he got bullied frequently. In fact, one time in elementary school, he was picked on so much on a cold November day that his nose was bleeding for the entire lunch hour, and nobody was there to help. As I grew up, I learned that this is not an uncommon experience. In fact, autism spectrum disorder affects 1 in 68 individuals. And according to Autism Speaks Canada, autism can cost a family up to 60,000 Canadian dollars per year per individual. Now, we all understand this is quite a burden to bear, and that this does not even account for the emotional hardships that a family goes through when living with someone with autism. So for my family, this is a picture of my brother and I. We really hold on to the hope my brother can be really happy and be a productive member of society. And I'm really happy to report back that he recently finished his undergraduate degree from U of T in music, and he's been able to hold on a few jobs and working as a productive member of society now, teaching piano and various jobs. But he has been able to. But what made a difference for him? What made a difference for my brother to be so successful? Of course, everyone is different when we're talking about autism, but there were 3 things that stuck out for us. Number 1 was genuine and meaningful relationships. He had a program that he would attend weekly in high school, where he was able to make friends outside of his home, outside of his school, and practice his social skills in a stress-free environment with people his own age, about things that he cared about the most. But unfortunately, this support moved away due to budget cuts. And this made me realize at a young age the importance of friendship, social circles, of belonging. Number 2 was a supportive and inclusive environment. That weekly program provided a consistent place where he could go and be themselves without fear of judgment or bullying, talking to people his own age, not just teachers or guidance counselors. And lastly, these type of supports help my family as a whole, as it often replaces the parents to get plugged in to other supports and services. Often these are sort of the gateways to understand how the system works on navigating this challenging disability. However, in my previous life, I worked in municipal summer camps for many years. And this isn't the case for everyone who's growing up with autism or other abilities. That being said, there are many, frankly, heartbreaking situations like this child, Jerry's here, who had learning disability and autism spectrum disorder. And I've seen this many times in my time working with the community, where during school and up to under the age of 12 or maybe even 16, they were highly supported through the school year and summer. The teachers, support staff took their time to make sure that they were included and integrated into the school and also into the greater community. There were times like I would see this individual 3 or 4 times in the local community center, and you get to know the staff and make friends. However, once he reached the age of 12, 13, maybe even 16, the programs of much needed support abruptly ended. And parents realized that almost all of the much needed supports have disappeared, reaching their teen years and adult years. This is bad timing, as we know that these are sort of when hormones come into play, puberty begins, and bullying starts at school. With the lack of services for this individual, Jerry, as well as puberty and bullying, it was difficult for him to make those meaningful relationships, especially with people his own age, leading to isolation, spending more time at home in the basement. We began to see him less and less in the community center. And recently learned that he spends almost all of his time in his basement, doesn't have close friends, and only interacts with people that his family allows, his immediate families, who may be too embarrassed to bring them out. So growing up with a family living with autism, most of my attention was directed at my brother on the on your left here. Because of this, when I was younger, I haven't been asked too often about how this has impacted my perspective. And to be honest, I didn't fully understand this until I was as an older brother, until I understand this to my teen years. What I did understand is my brother was different. And being in the same school as my brother made it even more difficult because I saw him being bullied. In fact, there was one instance at the school where he was being picked on, and we didn't know about this months later. This made me extremely upset, but instead of sulking or living with this sad reality, we decided to do something constructive about that, where this can help out not only my brother, but people in the similar situations. So for what I had to find was sort of that benefit to that isolation and that benefit to bullying. So as I transitioned to university, these stories stuck with me. And what I found was I eventually shared them with my close friends and colleagues. This was something I was starting to grasp at. I was surprised that many of my colleagues also had similar challenges, issues, and I also understood what my family was going through. The discussion grew and perspectives were added, which included future medical professionals during my time as a nursing student, and also my time working in recreation as supporting these individuals in the community. I talked about crippling anxiety. I had discussions with even people with autism with that crippling anxiety when they try to make friends. So that's when we decided to do an environmental scan to really understand what was happening in the community, what kind of supports are available out there, and what is being addressed in our city, in our area, in our province. We were able to get in contact with programs across Ontario to see how they run, how they benefited communities with autism. Our key learnings were, number one, recreation-based programs for teens with autism is a good place to reduce anxiety as cognitive behavioral therapy. Number two is that we also found that the reasons families have difficulty finding these programs is because they often are limited to where they live. So there are usually centralized programs, but they're oftentimes downtown. Well, we needed to offer a place where we live, which is a bit more in the suburbs area. And number three, we found that a peer-based teen program would allow teens to create their own social supportive network in their teen years, in the crucial teen years, moving forward into their adult lives. So realizing this, I assembled, our good friends here, and we had this crazy idea of starting our own weekly peer-to-peer program. This was the first time where we were both students, and I proposed this to make it work in our local community center. So in July of 2014 is when Autism Teenage Partnership started with the first initial funding for 2 months from York University. This was supposed to be a pilot. So in the first 2 months, we ran a successful program. We had over 30 people attend. We were so impressed with the results as young people with sort of that student mindset of minimal experience, providing a free service on a moderate budget with great effects in our community. Understanding our true issues, we decided to expand. And because of this, because we knew that we can do it, others can do it too. So now, 8 years later, we've been able to run weekly programs throughout the year. And we've launched up to 3 locations across Ontario as a national non-for-profit organization. We've been able to support teens and other diagnoses with a total of support of over 80 families living with autism with youth volunteers across the province. We also partner with small and large nonprofits, run charities, dances, education events, information fairs for individuals living with autism. Our motto is called, and this also includes my professional association, the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario. Our motto is building confidence because it's not only relevant to our participants, but also our youth volunteers who gain experience and provided the opportunity to apply their learnings to real life settings, and our parents who have started a parent support group where they can share resources and create bonds. Here are a few pictures of our most recent event celebrating Mother's Day and Nursing Week, holding a talent show and facilitating sessions with parents and advocates from our professional associations and some volunteers and our participants here. And you can see here we also did a talent show. We really love karaoke and just spending time together. So bring it back to where we started. I don't think we can ever separate sort of the personal life with the professional life. Really come as one individual. I will never forget that feeling of helplessness of seeing my brother being abandoned. I remember all those emotions, all that pent-up anger. But instead of anger, frustration, we decided to use that experience to our benefit. So these lived experiences allowed us to gain insight into the full implications of being a family member, living with autism or any other disability, and ultimately led us to do something different, which directly impacts our community beyond. So as I'm wrapping up sort of my introduction of Autism Teenage Partnership, or ATP, I'm looking forward to sharing a bit more about my journeys, from my lessons learned as a social entrepreneur, and learning also from my fellow panelists, Karen and Jennifer, I believe, also on their journey as well. So that concludes my presentation, and thank you so much for listening a little bit more about my work here at ATP.
But in times of the funding, 60,000 per year, an estimate that it might cost a parents to be able to support their child that is going through or dealing with or being diagnosed with autism. Would you be able to, in just few words, provide a very general high-level overview of what and where the participant can go to source for centralized programs or services or fundings? And also, I invite our participants to present an email to us with your specific questions, and we will see maybe we can bring Jackson back to have maybe a full section that you can ask your questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for that question. Yeah. So when you're talking about that, I think it's easy to talk about, the direct impact of autism, the things you buy, the services you have to get, such as therapies, but it's also, it's also opportunities lost, right? So, I know many of my participants, if they have somebody with autism in their life, many of them have to retire or stop working in order to give the supports needed for their child. The funding for, in the province of Ontario only goes so far. So I think that number sort of includes all the other, employment opportunities that you may miss without it. And thank you for that opportunity. I'm looking forward to presenting a bit more, but this is something really close to my heart. In my personal life, in my work life, as a teenager growing up with summer camp, and also in sort of the nursing sphere when I was doing my rotations in mental health. So it's really just a culmination of sort of those worlds that really, builds up to that perfect storm and understanding those challenges and being in the right place in the right time with the right connections to really do something about it.
I have a question here for Janson. Janson, what is your vision for ATP and how do you want to get the word out about ATP?
Thank you, Zesta. So I think with ATP, I think we always have to sort of dream big, but also plan. So I think for ATP, I think first thing they have to understand is ATP is small scale things that we sort of do in addition to a sort of our full-time work. So it's run entirely by volunteers. There's no one really getting paid for it. We do have a board of directors, but that are all volunteer based. So in terms of what we were trying to do is we really want to run a program that makes an impact in our communities at the end of the day. So we have to understand sort of our scope and our scale and sort of finding that niche. So at the end of the day, we have launched 3 programs across Ontario, and they sort of use a model similar to ours and we help support their work. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is serve our community and serve our clients with quality programs. At the beginning, I think we were talking a lot about expanding to larger different areas. But sort of as we grew and as we matured, we recognized sort of our own limitations as people. So we wanted to do things correctly, in the scale that we understand, rather than doing things that can be outside of our scope that is, half-hearted or not as to the quality that we want. So sort of as we grew years and years, we understand sort of our niche and what we do and how our services make a difference. So that's sort of what we want to see with Autism Teenage Partnership. Not saying that we have high ambitions, but saying that our focus is sustaining the supports for our existing customers and our services in our communities.